The outcome of the ivermectin lawsuit is a victory for medical ethics and a victory for reason. Taoist Reasoning, Episode 4. Far-left ideology is the biggest threat facing the United States. The damage it does to people's lives and property is immeasurable. There are openly violent forms of acts, such as burning public properties and destroying monuments, represented by Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and robbery and theft by big city gangsters connived by the Democratic Party. Recently, there has been a new class of criminals called squatters, who illegally occupy other people's property, especially involving illegal immigrants. These are blatant and outrageous behaviors which naturally arouse the public outrage. In addition, transgender men who interfere with female sports and cause physical and mental trauma to women are actually violent actors. But the far left has an even more harmful, yet far more subtle tactic. It is manifested in the wrong policies of some government agencies, so most people are not able to see through its essence. A good example is that during the COVID-19 epidemic, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, illegally and unreasonably banned an old drug called ivermectin, causing the loss of lives of countless patients, which was avoidable. In 2022, 3 conscientious doctors couldn't bear it anymore and took the FDA to court. They finally won the victory in March this year. This thought-provoking case has great legal, moral, and rational significance. So let's talk about it today. Everyone must remember that in the first 2 years of the COVID-19 epidemic, early 2000 to the end of 2001, there were no drugs specifically approved by the FDA for COVID-19 in the United States. At the time, those with mild symptoms were told to take antipyretics at home, while those with severe symptoms were sent to the emergency rooms and many were intubated and put on ventilators. The mortality rate of patients who have reached this stage, especially the elderly and those with comorbidity, is very high. But this type of tragedy could have been avoided. Many doctors have discovered that some old drugs already on the market have good anti-COVID-19 effects. As a result, some doctors with a strong sense of responsibility for treating diseases and saving lives, with solid medical knowledge and with rich medical experience, began to use these drugs to treat patients with this kind of new type of pneumonia and achieved good results. One of these old drugs is called ivermectin. In March 2021, the Delta variant broke out in India. In April, new coronavirus infections surged 20-fold, with daily new cases reaching 400,000 and daily deaths exceeding 4,000. Faced with a serious crisis, the Indian government distributed a home kit containing ivermectin tablets to residents in the outbreak areas. As a result, something amazing happened. The number of new Delta virus cases in India dropped precipitously. 5 weeks later, the number of deaths in some places was almost zero. However, the FDA continues to take a negative attitude towards the positive effects of ivermectin, and its official website published a page titled "Why Ivermectin Should Not Be Used to Treat or Prevent COVID-19." The FDA's position certainly affected hospital management. Some doctors who prescribed ivermectin lost their positions in hospitals and medical schools, and even their licenses to practice medicine. Some pharmacies are also refusing to fill prescriptions for COVID-19 patients. No one knows exactly how many patients died from the disease. However, according to the estimates of some reputable doctors, if the FDA had not turned on the red light to ivermectin at the end of 2020, at least 300,000 lives in the United States would have been saved by mid-2021. Why do such ridiculous and sad things happen in the United States? It is undeniable that the greed of big pharmaceutical companies is a factor. 2 oral drugs for the treatment of the COVID-19, Paxlovid and Molnupiravir, hurriedly launched by Pfizer and Merck, were granted emergency use authorization by the FDA at the end of 2021. They sold for hundreds of dollars, 2 orders of magnitude more expensive than ivermectin. But the key point is that the left-wing bureaucracy's decision to actually ban ivermectin gave some big pharmaceutical companies the rare opportunity to make a fortune. No matter what the motivations of FDA decision-makers are, they cannot escape the blame for the serious consequences of their failure to implement measures of epidemic prevention and control. Our focus here is not on its political motives, but on the illegality and irrationality of its policies. Many people don't know why the FDA approach is ridiculous. First of all, legally, it violates its own regulations. It is almost unthinkable that this would happen in an agency that has the power to regulate the sale of drugs. The FDA approved the use of ivermectin in humans in 1987. The main indications include the familiar ascariasis. Although it was not initially developed for COVID-19, because COVID-19 did not exist at the time, the law allows, once a drug is approved by the FDA to enter the market, doctors can use their own judgment to decide how to use it, including for other symptoms. This flexibility is called off-label use, which is clearly stipulated in the rules of drug management and has long been established in the practice of medical industry. This is nothing to be alarmed about, because regulations are based on rationalities and common sense. First, if a drug can be sold on the market for more than 30 years without being recalled, this means it is basically safe. Second, it has been widely used for a long time, and a large amount of data has been accumulated, especially on the relationship between dosage and the side effects. So people have become informed consumers. Third, and most importantly, off-label use must also go through doctors, so that doctors can have all the necessary tools to take care of patients, instead of being obstructed by bureaucracies. The public owe to the 3 doctors, Merrick, Apter, and Bowden, who filed a lawsuit against the FDA, and also to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, which enforces the law impartially. The court noted that when FDA exceeds its statutory authority, it no longer enjoys so-called sovereign immunity from lawsuits. In other words, the doctor's lawsuit could proceed. At this point, the FDA gave in and agreed to remove the information on the website about not using ivermectin. Let's further analyze the deception techniques commonly used by the leftist deep state. If this is not exposed, many people will continue to be fooled in the future. A tweet released by FDA in August 2021 included a picture of a horse with the title, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Seriously, stop using ivermectin." This is a clumsy, blatant lie. It deliberately conceals the basic fact that the FDA has approved both ivermectin for use in animals and ivermectin for use in humans, to mislead people who do not know the truth. This is disgusting. Finally, let's dissect the FDA's deceptive excuse for denying ivermectin. Its theoretical trump card is that ivermectin has not gone through the FDA's customary drug approval process, which is a clinical trial with a blind control group called placebo. This may sound sophisticated, but if you examine it carefully, you will find many flaws. All roads lead to Rome, and there is more than one way to determine the effectiveness of a drug. Aspirin has been an official drug for more than 100 years. Hundreds of millions of people have used it, proving that it can reduce fevers. And the amount of data available on its safe dosage is huge. Its reliability is better than that from a few clinical trials involving only hundreds to thousands of patients and lasting only months to years. It is understandable that if there is no actual data to refer to, then using a placebo control group as a rule can be justified, scientifically and practically. However, even for new drugs, the placebo control method is not absolute. It is known that not using drug is definitely not treating disease, but the drug is anticipated to have certain benefits. And if the patient does not receive treatment, it will cause him great harm. Then using a blind control group, in this case, is a violation of medical ethics. It is impossible that FDA, which is responsible for drug supervision, does not know this. What it does can only be a deliberate action. During the raging COVID-19 epidemic, Fauci, the White House chief medical advisor and an unparalleled authority, once said that there is nothing in the value of drugs if not shown by a control group. His rigidity, harshness, and insensitivity remind people of an example of testing the function of a parachute. According to the absolutely dogmatic method of strictly adhering to the blank control group, the participants must first be divided into two groups by drawing lots, and then one group would wear parachutes. The other blank group do not. When the plane reaches the predetermined height, everyone will have to jump off the plane. Is this ridiculous? It is this incredible folly that the far left elites are actually advocating. That's it for today. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, liking, and spreading the word.